This is a demo for making a scale foam core car seat. Things that you'll need to start: the design of a car seat, some foam core, an X-Acto knife and sharp blades, and Super 77 spray mount. It also helps to have a ruler and a self-healing cutting mat. The first thing you really need to do is start to think about the forms of the seat, and we're using foam core because it's a quick way to get large sweeping planes, and even though this is very organic, we're going to take advantage of the properties of foam core to get some of the curvature. So I'm looking at things like this, this curving, wrapping plane. Here's another wrapping plane. The bolsters and lumbar support are also sort of forms that wrap. So for example, I can think in really simple terms about that back and headrest. If you imagine that as a bending piece of foam core, and translate that basic method of construction into other pieces that do the same. So bending surface, and then again the same thing with some of the details. I also want to think about the structure and how to provide structure in my design. So I have a general sense of how it's going to work to translate into foam core, and some of it is going to be discovery along the way and adjustments, and you might have to build a model more than once to get it right. So what I've done after I thought about how my basic construction will work, I translated the design into the unfolded chair. So this represents this section. These represent these side sections. This is the lower section, the sides of the lower section, the frame structure, and then these are also part of the internal structure. So if you think about this while it's still a piece of paper, this is that curve that I'm talking about that represents that section of the seat. So what you need to do is translate how you're going to build it, and then create, using 2D CAD or Illustrator, create your basic drawings. That, as I said, it's sort of the unfolded chair. Then what I'm going to do is spray mount these on the foam core, cut out each piece. These are lines that are intended to be guides for scoring, and I'll show you how to do all those things. After I spray mounted all of my pieces, I do some really quick rough cuts just to separate the pieces into more manageable sizes. Be careful, by the way, to not slice yourself. Okay, it's really important to use a sharp knife. Craftsmanship matters, and I'm going to start cutting out all these pieces individually after I change out my blade. So when I'm cutting these pieces, I'm using a combination of a straight edge and just freehanding. Any longer sides, I will use a straight edge. And then when I come to curves, typically what I do is I first cut through the outer layer, the top layer of paper. Foam core is paper, foam, and paper. Once I cut through the outer layer of paper, I have a little groove that I can work with that helps me cut through everything else. So my point is, you don't have to try and go through the entire piece of material all at the same time. Take a few cuts to get it right. Okay, now, so I mentioned that these lines are my score lines. Those, I'm only going to cut through a single layer of paper. By cutting these, it's going to allow me to bend the material, which is inherently kind of stiff. So, okay, so now as you can see, I can bend this so it allows me, just removing a little material allows me to bend in either direction. And I can leave the paper on that I used as a template. I also added these cuts down here because as you can see near the bottom of the that sort of curves. So this is my attempt to just get a little bit of that curvature in there. So once I put this over my structure, it will keep this form. So something I'd like to point out as I'm cutting out all of my pieces, once in a while take time to clear off the scrap. It makes working easier and contributes to your piece being well crafted because you're not laying on top of little scraps and trying to fit in the corner of a cutting mat. One thing I wanted to point out about this specific piece, so this is the lower section and the side pieces, so that's the middle and the side pieces. Because I have score lines that run across all of them, before I separate these three pieces, I'm going to cut all my score lines at once. It will hopefully make it a neater part and things will align better. And it just makes it easier because I'm making one cut instead of three. After I cut out all of my pieces and did all my scoring, I started with the base structure. So this is the structure that everything else is going to be built on top of. So you can see how once I glue this down, you can start to see how the shape will come together. I'm going to do the, I'm going to be gluing a little bit at a time. I made a mark for myself for where this aligns. Again, I'm using hot glue. I always recommend do not set a hot glue gun on a self-healing mat. You will ruin it. So I really want to get the break point where the surface changes aligned in the right place. And then I'll lay this down. So just to be clear, this exercise is really about understanding the planes and the surfaces and capturing those in a relatively quick model. It will not be an exact reflection of the design. This kind of model is usually paired with renderings, and that helps paint the complete picture of the design. But so far, I'm getting the point across what this is supposed to look like. So you can see how that surface wraps, and then I'm going to add these. These are, I added little supports, and I will glue these on. You can see how once that's scored, I can get a pretty nice curve. There. So you can start to see the form coming together. It looks a little bit concave here. I have the curves like on the seat I'm using as a reference. The one thing I noticed, I probably made this a little bit too thick. I might try and go in there and trim a little bit away, but generally it's capturing the intent that I'm after so far. So, so I kicked these up slightly, and that allows me to create a slightly concave surface here. You can start to see how the forms are coming together. So here's the finished piece. The structure is pretty raw, but you can see that there's the piece that I was trying to capture wrapping over, the side pieces wrapping, the center section wrapping, and the side pieces on the lower wrapping. What I would typically do is I would mark this up, I would make adjustments, and I would make another version. But just some quick views. Interestingly, the back in the rendering has this sort of open looking structure, which this has. I'd probably add a little bit more structure to create something that has this look. That's it.